How's it going, you all?
And welcome back to B-Bros.
Today, we will be reviewing the new episode of The Mandalorian, Chapter 12, The Siege. It was a jam-packed episode and there's a lot of things to discuss. So we will start with a quick summary and talk about some Easter eggs. Then, we will deep dive into some key topics and end up with what to expect in the next episode.
Before we get into the video, we will be delighted if you join us on the channel by subscribing, and also drop a like if you enjoyed the video.
Before further ado, let's get into the video. We start the episode from the point we left off the previous one, which is the Mandalorian and the child traveling to the city of Caladan on the forest planet of Corvus to meet Ahsoka Tano. Unfortunately, the Razor Crest had a lot of damage since leaving Tatooine and requires some maintenance as it cannot reach the final destination with its current condition.
The Mandalorian desperately tries to fix the ship with his own resources and the help of the child, but is unsuccessful. Therefore, he decides to have a detour on Nevarro for the ship to be fixed, and he visits some old friends, Greef Karga and Cara Dune.
Nevarro has changed since Mando left. Greef Karga looks like the new leader now that the Empire is gone, and Cara is the new marshal. Together, they made the city safer and the place better to live, but there is still one massive problem.
Before they introduce the problem to Mando, they leave the child to a school in town, as Karga thinks the child should not be exposed to yet another problem. Mando is unsettled for leaving him alone, as wherever he goes, the child goes.
Wherever I go, he goes.
But trusts Cara's word that he will be safe.
The school that we see is the same place as the bar that Moff Gideon and his troops destroyed in the finale of Season 1. The school is mostly about the child, but what the teacher, 3PO protocol droid, is teaching to the class gives a lot of information about the boundaries of the galaxy. There is information about the rims, outer rim, inner rim, mid-rim, some important systems like Corellia, and Old Republic capital, Coruscant. It is always nice to hear some Easter eggs. I wish I was a part of that class to learn more.
The massive problem is the Imperial facility that is present on the planet. Greef and Cara want to destroy the facility in order to free Nevarro fully and prevent any potential danger in the future. Reluctantly, the Mandalorian decides to help. Also, we see Mithril that Mando hunted on the first episode of the show.
Is that me?
There's a nice callback to Han Solo's carbonite freezing process in The Empire Strikes Back. Mithril complains about his left eye not seeing properly due to being frozen in carbonite, which reminds us how Solo was momentarily blind after waking up from carbonite on Return of the Jedi.
I can't see.
Another reference to the original trilogy is the speeder that they use to go to the Imperial facility. They use a land speeder which is first introduced to us in 1977 by Luke Skywalker in A New Hope.
The objective of the mission is to destroy the Imperial facility. After sabotaging the reactor to prevent cooling of the facility, they are ready to leave as the lava will melt down the place.
As they are escaping, one of the most important scenes of The Mandalorian takes place. They learn that this Imperial facility is not an ordinary one. It is a laboratory for cloning.
We see a recording from Dr. Pershing, the scientist from Season 1. His recording is for Moff Gideon, who is the officer in charge of the cloning experiments. In the recording, he says that he needs the child to extract more blood to finish the cloning process. We believe, as most of you would too, they cannot use anyone's blood. They need to find a species with an insane M count, as mentioned by Dr. Pershing, which stands for midi-chlorians, because they are trying to clone Palpatine. We will get into more details about this in a while in this video.
When Mando learns that this message is only 3 days old, he figures out that Gideon is alive and rushes back to the child to make sure he is safe. His paranoia shows how worried he is about the child and how terrified he is by Gideon.
Father reflex and trauma from his past is good enough reason for him to feel this way.
Mando flies back to the city to recover the child. While he is on his way, Greef, Cara and Mithril escape with a K-79 S-80 Imperial troop transport, which you can remember from Star Wars Rebels.
scene where repaired Razor Crest saving the day by destroying the TIE fighters chasing the transport was a great return for the ship.
After saving the day, Mando and the child continue their quest to find Ahsoka, and we go back to the city.
In the city, the New Republic investigate the recent events. It is very important to point out that Greef does not give any usable information to the pilots who are doing the investigation. By the way, they are also the pilots who saved Mando from the giant spiders 2 episodes back on the ice planet. In the episode, Greef mentions that he does not want the New Republic to intervene with the Outer Rim, and we can see, even against a threat as big as the Empire, he does not want the Republic's help. We will touch on this topic more in the remainder of this video.
Before the pilots leave, one of them talks to Kara about the help they need. He claims that the New Republic is not willing to accept the danger of the Empire, but some of the fighters think they will become a threat in the future. This point of view of the New Republic is the key element why the Resistance was formed, and how the First Order gained so much power.
All remaining systems will bow to the First Order!
If you listen carefully, as the pilot is ready to leave, we hear the music on the back that resembles the Resistance theme from the sequel trilogy. The episode ends with an appearance of Moff Gideon on a starship, which is an Imperial cruiser, a small-sized Star Destroyer that we see regularly on Star Wars Rebels.
Moff is informed by an officer that they have located the Razor Crest by the tracking beacon that the mechanic who fixed the ship placed. Even after losing the control of the galaxy, we can see the influence of the Empire continue.
If you're interested in the different species in the Star Wars galaxy, the mechanic that we just mentioned is a red Mimbanese from the planet Mimban. The species was first introduced in the Star Wars novel Splinter of the Mind's Eye, released in 1978, after the release of New Hope. You can see the species on Solo: A Star Wars Story as well.
After hearing the good news, for the Empire I suppose, Gideon orders his troops to bring the child. As the episode ends, we can see Gideon's Dark Troopers, which are advanced battle droids, getting ready for their task.
Now that the not-so-quick summary and references are discussed, we are ready to talk about some key points from this episode. As we are going through these key points, we will be connecting them to the sequel trilogy as they are directly related.
These points that we'll talk about are the cloning process and the return of Palpatine, and the response of the New Republic to the threat of the Empire and the birth of the Resistance.
After the Battle of Endor, the Empire seemed to be wiped out as a whole, with their leader Palpatine, strongest Force Vader, and ultimate weapon, the Death Star, all destroyed. However, with the sequel trilogy, we see that to destroy the Empire, you need to do more.
As we learn in the video game Star Wars Battlefront 2 Story Mode campaign, which is canon by the way, in case the Empire was destroyed, Palpatine always had a backup to bring back the Empire and sit back on the throne.
Admiral Versio, Operation Cinder is to begin at once.
Palpatine's way back to life and then to the throne was through cloning. Palpatine was such a visionary that he planned a return even after death. Apparently, after his death, Moff Gideon was in charge to lead the experiments for cloning and bring back Palpatine.
What is crucial in this cloning process is not bringing back Palpatine only, but it is to bring him back as a Force user. This is where the importance of the child comes in.
At this point in time, there is no known way to clone someone as a Force user. From The Mandalorian, we understand that to do this, blood sample from a species that contain a very high midi-chlorian count is required.
What are midi-chlorians?
Midi-chlorians are a microscopic life form that resides within all living cells.
I don't understand.
With time and training, Annie, you will.
The child's species are extremely rare, as we only know 2 other members in the Star Wars galaxy from the same species, who are Yoda and Yaddle, both Jedi Masters. And they all have a very high midi-chlorian count, which is exactly what the Empire needs.
The bodies inside the chambers are the experiments to create a Force-using clone. In The Rise of Skywalker, we not only see the return of Palpatine, but also learn that Palpatine created Snoke.
My boy, I made Snoke.
They must have gone through a similar process, as they are both Force-sensitive clones, but it's not clear to us whether the bodies we saw in the episode belongs to Snoke or Palpatine.
We believe the first thing that the Empire would do is to bring back Palpatine, and then deal with the creation of Snoke. But we do not know the exact phase of the experiments, so this is still an unknown to us.
Now it is time to discuss why the New Republic could not prevent the return of Palpatine and the Empire in The Rise of Skywalker.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
There are two evidences in this episode that helps us understand the reason behind it. First one is how the people in the Outer Rim view the New Republic. Greef Karga's strong beliefs against not only the New Republic but against any kind of supervision of a government shows us the lack of support in the Outer Rim. If this is how the whole Outer Rim treats the New Republic, which we believe they do, it is hard to control a system with no local support.
The second reason is the lack of vision of the New Republic. The pilot in this episode mentions how the Inner Rim is not willing to accept that the Empire is a threat. When no one takes necessary action, the Empire can work on their comeback as the First Order.
We would be unfair if we had not mentioned the efforts of Leia Organa, who knew how big of a threat the Empire was. She was the only leader in the New Republic to ask for a military force to stop the Empire or any kind of emerging threat. But she was seen as an extremist whose mind was still occupied with the war by other leaders and was casted out.
This was not enough to prevent Leia to build his own force called the Resistance. Without the full support of the New Republic, the Resistance was not as strong as she would have hoped, but it was the only defense against the ashes of the Empire, and later the First Order, who was born from the ashes of the Empire.
There was a lot of sequel trilogy content here, but we believe the information that we get from The Mandalorian is the only way to save those movies, so we find these connections extremely valuable.
Before we move on, we would like to end with our discussion with what can happen in the next episode.
Now that the Empire is chasing the child again, a confrontation is inevitable. Also, an appearance from Ahsoka will happen 100% as well. Dave Filoni, the creator of the character Ahsoka Tano, will be directing the next episode, so we believe that she will play a major role. We trust Filoni, as always, that he will do his absolute best to portray Ahsoka in live action, and we will watch an incredible episode.
This was everything that we extracted from Chapter 12. If you have any opinions to add to what we discussed today, or any questions to ask, feel free to comment down below.
We will be replying to every single comment. Next week, on Monday 4 PM Eastern Standard Time, we will be back with the review of Chapter 13. We are expecting another banger of an episode, so thank you for watching and we'll see you in the next one.